Hello, I am Dr. Tom McCloskey, and I'm the author of the series, The Challenge of Islam. Today's presentation is entitled, The Middle East Today. I will divide this into 4 parts: a historical summary, an overview since World War II, short synopsis country by country, and finally plans for peace. We begin now with the summary. Because of the Crusades of the 11th and 12th centuries, and due to the expulsion of Jews and Muslims from Spain in 1492, there was little contact between the Muslims in the East and Europeans in the West from 1500 to 1800. This included missing out on great figures of science, of the philosophy and Enlightenment, of the French Revolution, freedom, equality, and fraternity, freedom of religion, printing press, representative democracy, and a whole host of things in the age of exploration. Napoleon conquers Egypt in 1798, and the people are fascinated with his military weapons. About 10 years later, they invite in the French military to train their army. First, you have to learn modern math and the laws of physics, the instructors say. The response, but I'm not interested in that. The truth is, they go together. The British end up ruling Egypt and controlling the trade routes for most of the 1800s. There's a big clash which still goes on today when students are sent to Europe for a liberal education and come back to a village where many are following the beliefs and ways of centuries ago. There's a clash with modernity in dress, religion, and many areas. Theodor Herzl starts the Zionist movement in Europe in the 1890s for a return to Israel of Jews, which is given official status in the 1917 British Balfour Declaration. Following World War I, Turkey is defeated and the Ottoman Empire of the Middle East is dismantled. It is replaced by British protectorates, Egypt, Jordan, Palestine, and French protectorates, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. We now go to a brief overview since World War II. In the 1950s and 60s, General Nasser promotes his own view of pan-Arabism and socialism, and he convinces Jordan and Syria to join him in the 1967 invasion of Israel. In the 70s and 80s, there's a greater influence of Saudi Arabia and the importance of oil in the region. The Iranian Revolution takes place in 1979. There's a recognition of Israel by Egypt in 1978 and Jordan in 1984. In the 90s, the Palestine Liberation Front is recognized and given Gaza Strip and the West Bank provisionally as a result of the Oslo Accords. And finally, in 2000, we await the further development of peace between the PLO and Israel. We move now to a brief synopsis of the region, country by country, starting with Turkey as a special case, moving to Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the PLO as Sunni groups. Then we move to Iran, Iraq, and Syria as Shiite groups, followed by Lebanon, which is mixed, concluding with Israel. Turkey gains its independence in 1924 and is led by General Kemal Mustafa, who rules until 1940. He's known as Ataturk, or Father of the Turks. They take on the Western modernity with a change of dress, freedom of religion, separation of church and state, the emancipation of women. Public education is taken over by the government. There's a parliamentary democracy. They have 67 million people with a gross national product of $3,000 per capita, and currently they are an applicant to the European Union. We move now to Egypt with a population of 70 million. Their capital is Cairo. The language is Arabic. It's 90% Muslim, 10% Christian. Egypt is a very ancient civilization. and it's the headquarters for the United Arab League. Nasser comes to power in 1954. He nationalizes the Suez Canal, gets Russian help with the Aswan Dam, promotes Pan-Arabism, starts the United Arab League, leads the 1967 war, and recognizes and funds the PLO. He's followed by Anwar Sadat, who concludes peace with Israel in 1978 and is assassinated 3 years later, followed by Hosni Mubarak, who rules until today. We turn now to Jordan, bordered on the west by Israel, Syria on the north, and Saudi Arabia to the east and the south. The Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan speaks the Arabic language, with Amman as its capital, $1,600 per capita income, and a population of 6.7 million. They gained their independence in 1946, and their current borders were formed in 1967 when Israel took over what became known as West Jordan. King Abdullah II followed his father on the throne in 1999. The Palestine Liberation Organization is not a country but a movement. It's formed in 1967, simultaneous with the war against Israel, under the patronage of Nasser, but located for the first years in Jordan. Yasser Arafat becomes head in 1969, is kicked out of Jordan to Lebanon in 1970. Americans and Europeans move him to Tunisia in 1982. He's invited to the Gaza Strip to head up the Palestine Authority in 1994, and he dies in November of 2004. Arafat had been invited to the Gaza Strip to govern as a result of the Oslo Accords of the 1990s. However, there's a continued dispute with Israel because the PLO cannot hold back terrorists. Israel builds a wall and pulls out of some settlements. Mahmoud Abbas succeeds him the following month, and Israel leaves Gaza completely in September of 2005. We now move to Saudi Arabia, bordered on the north by Iraq and Iran, and on the south by the other Arab Gulf states. Saudi Arabia has a population of 20 million people, an average income of $7,000. Their population is 75% Saudi and 25% foreign guest workers. They speak the Arabic language. They are Sunni Muslims with a strong influence of the conservative Wahhabi group. They are a monarchy with consultations, and King Abdullah is pictured here with President Bush, a strong ally. Saudi Arabia is a major influence in the region. It welcomes millions of pilgrims to Mecca in their yearly Hajj. It demonstrates a Puritan and strict form of Sunni Muslim religion, which has had huge influence on the region. Oil money has funded wars against Israel and rebel groups in various countries, including Afghanistan. We've just concluded a brief tour of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan in the south, known as Sunnis. They have one dictator and two kings. We prepare to move to Iran, Iraq, and Syria in the north, which is a Shiite area, and they are one religious theocracy, one dictator, and Iraq. The two major divisions in the Muslim community then are Sunni and Shiite. Sunni majorities in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, and the Shiite majorities in Iran, Iraq, and Syria. What is the difference? This split in the Muslim community comes after the death of Muhammad. He had not named a leader, but there was a movement to have Ali, his cousin and son-in-law, as his successor. 3 others assume leadership before he finally gains it as number 4. However, he's killed in battle, and one group wants to have a family member succeed him, while others want someone from outside the family. Later, his son Hussein is killed at Karbala. There are annual pilgrimages and a reenactment of this event at Karbala. The second group wins out, and they follow Sunnah, or custom, very strongly, while the opposition became known as Shi'at Ali, or the partisans of Ali. This is the origin of Sunnis and Shiites. There follows a series of 10 more generations of Shiite family successors to Ali, and the line dies out. There is a belief among some that when the 12th one comes, he is to usher in an era of peace and the end of the world. He's known as Al-Mahdi, standing under God's direction. Most shrines of the Shiites are in Iraq, which has a majority Shiite Muslim population. There's always been a very close relationship between Shiites of Iran and Iraq. They see themselves as the true revolutionaries to the cause, and they are extremely proud of their martyrs, who usually end up on the losing side. There are shrines at Najaf, Baghdad, Karbala, and Samarkand in Iraq, Majdan and Qom in Iran, and Mecca in Saudi Arabia. Iran and Iraq have majority Shiite, while Syria has many as well. The Islamic Republic of Iran has its capital in Tehran. It consists of 68 million people with an average per capita income of $1,800. Ayatollah Khomeini deposes the Shah and gives clergy a religious duty to establish a social justice system in 1979. There's since been some tension between elected rulers and clergy, but clergy still have a very strong influence. Bashar Assad of Syria and Mohammed Ahmadinejad are pictured. You can see here that Iran is a rather large country bordered on the south by the important Persian Gulf. Ayatollah Ali Khomeini is the current religious leader. We turn now to the country of Iraq, which of course has been very much in the news with our American forces there. The capital is Baghdad, and it occupies a very strategic position. Iraq received its independence in 1932. It is a country of 27 million people with an average income of $950. They speak the Arabic language. The Sunni Muslim minority, which has been in power, and the Shiite Muslims are a majority, with the Kurds in the northeast a very strong minority. The capital is Baghdad, and it sits along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This is an ancient civilization where Abraham began his journey to Israel as father of his people. The sons of Isaac, Israelites; the sons of Hagar, Arabs. In March of 2003, United States invades Iraq to eliminate weapons of mass destruction and remove Hussein from office. He's captured, goes to trial, and is put to death for his crimes. We move north and west now to Syria, which is bordered in the north by Turkey, and Lebanon to the west, and Jordan to the south. The Syrian Arab Republic has its capital in Damascus, a population of 16 million people. They gained their independence in 1941. They speak Arabic. $970 a year is the per capita income. Hafez al-Assad founded the Ba'ath Party and became president in 1970. He's succeeded by his son, the current president Bashar al-Assad, in 2000. It's a one-party state. The Ba'ath Party and military first came to power in 1963 with the vision of all Arab nations forming a single socialist Arab state under the leadership of Syria. The country's 90% Muslim, with a dedicated minority, Alawi, which is a form of Shiites. There are 10% Christians. They dominated Lebanon in the 80s and 90s and forced out in 2005. Moving to the west, we encounter Lebanon, with Turkey to the north, Israel to the south, and the Mediterranean to their west. Its capital, Beirut, is sometimes referred to as the Paris of the Middle East. Lebanon gained its independence in 1941. Its capital, Beirut, and the Arabic language is spoken there. They have 3.3 million people with an annual income of $3,700. The makeup is 70% Muslim and 30% Christian. There is a brutal civil war which began in 1975 and lasted until a Saudi-brokered peace in 1989. The PLO was ejected in 82, but a Shiite Hezbollah group takes their place. Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah assumes leadership of Hezbollah and leads the attack on Israeli settlements in July of 2006. There is a large Palestinian population which has been there since 1948. The population has many subsets of Muslims and Christians. Islamic fundamentalism is influential among poor Shiite Muslims, who constitute the largest single group. The Prime Minister is a Sunni Muslim, Saeed Hariri. President Suleiman is a Christian, and Speaker Barry is a Shiite Muslim. This is all according to the Constitution. Finally, we arrive at Israel, which is the only democracy in the Middle East. They are surrounded by their Muslim neighbors, with the Mediterranean to the west. The shaded portions are slated to be turned over to the PLO, the Gaza, and the West Bank once disputes are resolved. Israel was formed by a vote of the United Nations in 1948. It has a parliamentary form of democracy. Its capital is Jerusalem. The official language is Hebrew. The population is 6.3 million, with 75% Jewish, 15% Muslim, 10% Christian, and other. Their average annual income per capita is $25,000. They have fought wars in 1948, 1967, and 1973 in response to their Arab neighbors. Yitzhak Rabin and Arafat in September of 1993 were brought together by President Clinton. There was an agreement known as the Declaration of Principles with the PLO, which leads the way for Arafat to come to the West Bank and start to form the state of Palestine. Rabin signs a peace treaty with Jordan in October of 1994. And the following month, he is assassinated by a Jewish gunman. In 2006, former President Jimmy Carter authors a book describing his hopes for a resolution of tensions in the area, Peace, Not Apartheid. In that book, President Carter proposes, number one, that all parties must recognize the state of Israel and its right to exist. Number two, Israel has a right to the security of its borders and internal security. And I would add as a third point that Islam as a religion and Arabs as a people need to accept some type of modernity which focuses on economic development while maintaining their basic religious values and beliefs. By way of summary of this region, we now have dictatorships in Egypt and Syria, with a theocracy in Iran. We have kings in Jordan, with elements of democracy, and Saudi Arabia, with very limited democracy, little freedom of speech, no freedom of religion. Iraq is under reconstruction. We hope towards democracy. Israel has a full democracy. Lebanon has a struggling democracy. And Turkey as a democracy, and it is seeking admittance to the European Union, and in some ways is setting an example for Muslims of resolving that tension between their faith and modernity. Our guiding values then must be those that we find in our Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, with the belief that those values are embedded in the human heart. America has a choice. We can be the great conciliator, or we can be the great policeman. And that will involve cooperation, multilateralism, dialogue, and building of friendships. In our series, The Challenge of Islam, this is number 3, Muslims in America. Thank you for your kind attention, and I hope you have found this helpful in a better understanding for a lasting peace in the Middle East.